questions, I will ask for the members of the public who want to make a public comment to do so in turn. Comments from those on the telephone will be taken first. When it's your turn, you'll be placed on the speaker by staff. After all telephone comments are completed, any written public comments received prior to the meeting will be read by a city staff member. All public comments will be limited to the customary 3-minute time limit. That being out of the way, I will call the special meeting to order and ask if we could please have a roll call of the city council members.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Gregory.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond.
Here.
Councilmember Strong. Councilmember Strong, are you with us?
We do have a majority of the council present. Councilmember Strong may be having some technical difficulties, and we'll try to get a hold of him. Shall we proceed forward?
And Mayor Steve Martin.
I am here.
And we will notify you when Councilmember Strong rejoins the live cast.
Thank you. As we proceed forward, we'd like to maintain a certain amount of decorum. So if you will, wherever you are, rise and face the closest flag that you have. And would someone please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Sarah, how about you? Would you do that this morning?
Please say the oath with me. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's harder when you can't see each other. Okay, we do have some staff present. Could we get staff introductions, please?
Warren Frace, Community Development Director.
Melissa Martin, Deputy City Clerk.
Ryan Cornell, Administrative Services Director.
Jonathan Stornetta, Fire Chief.
David McHugh, Information Technology.
Ty Lewis, Police Chief.
Thank you all for being here. I know it's been... Hello?
Oh, sorry. So Kimberly Hood, City Attorney.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you all for being here. Hi, Tom. Tom Frucci, City Manager, is here. Anybody else? Okay. Sorry to speak over you. A reminder that an opportunity is going to be provided for each agenda item when that agenda item is called. And again, the phone number is 888-867-1694. So let's proceed forward with our agenda. We have a consent agenda with only one item on it. That's the designation of the city's agents in applying for reimbursement from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. Since there is only one item, Tom, you want to give us a brief précis of what this is?
I would be glad to, Your Honor. So the under state and federal law is required that the City Council designate the people within the city organization who can authorize a reimbursement request from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And this action has to be by resolution of the City Council. So we are asking you today to designate the City Manager, Tom Frucci, the Assistant City Manager, Sarah Johnson-Rios, and the Director of Administrative Services, Ryan Cornell, to be enabled and empowered to apply for and obtain any disaster relief for which we are eligible.
Okay, so in order to keep things straight, let's just go down councilperson by councilperson. Are the questions of the staff on this particular item? Councilman Gregory.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Hammond.
None.
Councilwoman Garcia.
None.
And is Councilman Strong with us yet? Okay.
No.
At this time, then, I will ask if there is anyone on the phone line with a public comment.
No comment at this time.
Very good. Were there any written comments regarding this prior to this morning's meeting?
No, Mr. Mayor, there were not.
Very good. In that case, I would entertain a motion from the council to approve the one-item consent calendar.
So moved. This is Councilman Gregory.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Hammond. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Is Councilmember Strong present? Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Mayor Steve Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with Councilman Strong not in attendance yet. Next, we have discussion items on the agenda. Agenda item number 2, and a reminder to the public, the call-in number for public comment is 888-867-1694. This item is COVID-19 pandemic update. Mr. Stornetta?
Good morning, Mayor Martin, members of the council, Jonathan Stornetta, Fire Chief. Today, I'll provide you a brief overview of our current situation with the COVID-19 response. As you can see on the screen in front of you, on March 16th, I gave you the metrics in the left column there, and today are the metrics in the right column. So in just 10 days, there's been a substantial increase in all of these categories. As you see under the U.S., just over 82,000 confirmed cases, which is a substantial increase from 10 days ago. I just learned this morning that the United States now is exceeding over 86,000 positive cases. That now puts us at the largest positive cases in any other country. So, and we're haven't even hit our surge that we're anticipating yet. If you go down a little more, California, over 3,800 confirmed cases within the state, and there's 54 currently confirmed in San Luis Obispo County. So again, a substantial increase from 10 days ago. As you see here in front of you, this is our metrics for just San Luis Obispo County alone. Starting 10 days ago on March 14th, we've seen an increase to 54 positive cases. We're trending about 4.5 per day, and we expect and are planning for this number to continually grow and our projections to significantly increase with the surge we anticipate to be somewhere around April 24th. This identifies the age of the positive cases throughout San Luis Obispo County. So they are spread out pretty evenly from the age of 18 to over 65 years old. This chart here just identifies where these positive cases are located throughout the county. I can tell you in Paso Robles alone, there are 15 cases within the city limits. 6 of those are isolated to one small community, and it was transmission from a public transmission, no travel or anything like that. So 15 cases currently in Paso Robles. So current situation here in Paso Robles is some of the things we've been working on is implementing some workplace controls. We have opened up a fire station 3. So prior to opening that station, we had approximately 9 to 10 first responders working out of fire station 1, and we were unable to maintain proper distancing from each other. So in our effort to decrease our exposure to each other, we have moved one of our engine companies out of that station and moved them in the Centennial Park, and they are working 24-hour shifts out there. So we have identified that as our temporary fire station 3. So currently we have an apparatus with paramedics, 1 at station 1, 1 at station 2, 1 at station 3. Additionally, the police department only has 1 station, so they had a number of officers that were commingling throughout the day in one location. So they also have been moved out to Centennial Park, and they are in a separate location of the building out there. The ambulance station used to run out of Fire Station 1, and again, for the same reasons, they have moved out of Fire Station 1, and they are renting a house within the city of Paso Robles to limit their exposures. We've taken a number of steps for all of our employees to telecommute at this time. A number of them are working remotely so we can minimize those exposures. Supply inventories, we're still having difficulty getting supplies for our first responders. So our personal protective equipment, we are starting to see some of those supplies start to filter in, but it's still very challenging given all the other ongoing concerns throughout the country and other states being prioritized, such as New York. Public information, we have our public information office is stood up and working cooperatively with the San Luis Obispo County EOC and the Joint Information Committee down there. We are, as I said earlier, we are preparing for that surge, and we're taking all actions necessary to make sure that we are available for that. So some of the things we're doing, working with the county right now, is additional care sites. Cal Poly has been identified as an additional care site to be prepared for that surge. We anticipate we will run out of hospital rooms as well as ICUs. So Cal Poly currently has been designated as one of the care sites. They anticipate to hold 600 to 800 people, and that's set to open on April 8th. As far as homeless services, we have been working with the county to identify locations for the homeless population that, one, are symptomatic with COVID-19 symptoms, and two, they have been confirmed positive. So motels have been identified in Atascadero and San Luis and are currently open at this time, as well as another facility at El Chorro Park. At this time, we do know 4 positive cases. The county has also closed a number of beaches and parks because of the social distancing requirements and for us to try acting progressively to minimize further cases. A number of meal deliveries have been set up and helping out the elderly and those individuals who do not have the proper food. Childcare has been established for all first responders and essential service employees. And the county's also implemented a behavioral health 1-800 number and then their public information. So what are the goals for us here in Paso Robles is to reduce the total number of cases. And one of the biggest things we work with is flattening that curve. So we encourage all residents to continue to shelter at home and maintain their social distances. We need to protect our healthcare workers and first responders. There's a limited amount of them, and there's a number of first responders throughout the country that are already out of work because they tested positive, just over 2,000 of those already. We continue to strive to get the needed equipment and consumables that we need, and one of our biggest goals is we want to make sure that we keep our public informed. This graph in front of you shows California, and this is what we talk about when we're flattening the curve. So as you can see, the predicted date for that curve to be at its highest, the surge that we're expecting and planning for is scheduled for April 24th. So about 26 days from now till then, we might see that surge. We have identified that we are going to have problems with the number of ICU beds we have, the number of hospital beds, and that shortage, as well as the ventilators that we need. As I stated earlier, New York is the priority right now, so a number of the requests that we've been trying to get for ventilators has been sent elsewhere. So how can we reduce our exposure? Like we've talked about time and time again, make sure that we can go out and get the flu shots. We wash our hands often. Stay home when you're sick. Please do not travel. And most importantly, please shelter at home. So current and future issues that we're working on in the EOC, so our Emergency Operations Center at this time, is maintaining those essential businesses, the evictions for non-payment of rent, minimizing the harm to families and those businesses, and trying to assist those in need. And we're working with our finance department and a number of others, ensuring reimbursement for local expenditures. And we're always planning for recovery. So sites that you can go to get additional information is in front of your screen right there. And for those that don't have it in front of your screen, it's cdc.gov, readyslow.org, and prcity.com. That concludes my presentation. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This is an update presentation. I understand Councilman Strong is with us now. Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Very good.
I was
okay, let's move on. Let's move on to council questions regarding the presentation here. And again, we'll go down the line to make sure we don't talk over each other. Councilwoman Garcia, any questions or comments about that report?
I just had a question. I had a call yesterday about that, the rent for residents and they were reading that that it's, SLO County, so that does cover Paso residents, correct?
So, Councilmember Garcia, this is Kimberly, and so we're actually going to be covering that in item 4 to ensure that it covers Paso. You're correct that the county does currently have a stay or moratorium in place on evictions, and so to ensure that that actually applies in Paso Robles, that'll be in item 4 on the agenda today.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Hammond?
Yes, Jonathan, do we have, of the 15 in Paso, are any of them hospitalized, or are they in their own homes?
The Public Health Director, Dr. Penny Bornstein, has not given us that information as of yet, so I do not have an answer for that.
All right, thank you.
As of yesterday, I have a conference call with the electeds around the county each morning, or each afternoon, rather. And as of yesterday, the report was we had one person in ICU. Don't know who that is. Obviously, there are privacy concerns there. Most people recovering at home, and several that are near full recovery.
Yeah,
that could change. Yeah, that could change day to day, though. Mr. Gregory.
Yes, Jonathan, I don't know if you can answer this question, but how are our abilities to test people? Are we gaining any ground on that at this point?
The Public Health Department is working on a number of different avenues to try increasing the pace of tests that we currently have. One of the challenges we have is just obtaining the tests, but I know they are working with some contract labs to actually develop a 45-minute test. So all of those are currently in process right now, and we hope that comes to fruition as soon as possible.
So last night I saw a report on Johns Hopkins University has come up with a test for immunity that takes 15 minutes for results. It's a nonprofit hospital. Is there a way we can encourage the county to reach out to try to get our hands on that?
I'd be happy to pass that along to Dr. Bornstein.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just wanted to, my question was that everybody I've talked to in the medical world, we need testing to help us get ahead of the curve. So I'd like to keep pushing that or requesting that. So thank you.
I'll just add,
Councilman Strong.
Oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just add to that, Mr. Gregory, is our Public Health Department with our surrounding tri-counties is doing the most tests per day over any other county. So the Public Health Department here is currently doing about 500 tests daily.
Our county? Wow.
Yes, our county.
That's good news. Yeah. Okay.
Is that, Mr. Tornetta, is that public health tests only? Because I know there are several private labs that are doing testing also.
You are correct. That is public health only, capabilities of 500 tests a day.
Okay, so the capacity for the county has increased over the last week and a half. A week and a half ago, the county capacity was only about 50 tests per day. So now they're doing about 500. And there's really no way of knowing what the private labs are doing, but it's expected they're doing a like amount. So the number of tests daily the capacity for testing has gone up substantially over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I
have one further question.
Yeah, I would just reiterate.
Yes, go ahead.
That is the capacity. We do not have the sufficient amount of test kits to be able to implement that at this time, is what I've been told.
Exactly. Yes. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Martin. So, John, my other question on that is there any kind of protocol for a North County location for doctors and medical people to get health department tests available to the local public up here?
I'm going to see if I understand your question correctly. Right now, the priority for test is first responders, healthcare workers, and those that are showing signs and symptoms. So I'm not sure that adequately addressed your question.
I don't know if this is a question for me is that in speaking to a doctor yesterday, he can't get hands on test kits for his office in Templeton. So if he is truly one of the first responders, what is the process for these folks to get access to the testing for their patients?
So as I stated earlier, there are a limited amount of tests, and those tests that we do have are just directed towards those key or essential first responders or healthcare workers. I would recommend to whoever's looking for those tests just to reach out to Dr. Penny Borenstein.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Strong?
Yes, I got into this meeting late. Somehow our communication system broke down and I wasn't informed that we were having a meeting at this time. So if we could check on that, I'd surely appreciate it. So I'm behind the curve. I didn't hear the presentation. I can't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Maria?
Yeah. Steve?
Yes.
Yeah, Jonathan, as far as our Centennial crew, is that the squad that's out there, or what do we have stationed, and are they basically bivouacking there, basically, and they're staying there full time?
Yes, Councilman Hammond, that is the squad that's at Centennial Park. They are there 24/7, and the response boundaries have been adjusted to meet those needs.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other council comments or questions? Hearing none.
Yes.
Going to the... I'm sorry, Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, just one last question. I was listening, and it says first responders and healthcare workers. I know that all of our pharmacies are open in the area, and could pharmacies also have access to that testing?
I'm sure they would have access to that testing, but I'm not sure where Dr. Penny Borenstein has those on the priority list for the pharmacies. Like I said, it's probably, as I've been told, it's the first responders and the healthcare workers. So I would just have to assume that the pharmacies would be included in that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council comments? Going once, going twice. Very good. We'll go to the public. I understand here that we have no one on the phone for this item. Do we have any written communications for this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one written communication for this item.
Could you read that for us, please?
Of course, this was received from Roberta Jorgensen, 810 Cherry Street, Paso Robles. In trying to support our local restaurants by ordering takeout meals, I have found that all but one of those I have dealt with are exhibiting great concern and carefully planned procedures to keep their staff and customers safe. However, I had one disturbing experience with a popular downtown restaurant where they didn't seem to, quote, get it, end quote, at all. Can the city help keep our citizens and workers safe by requesting county health to provide restaurants with procedures for safe food handling and transfer of meals to customers? Should poor procedures be reported to county health, social media, etc.? How can the city make this situation better? Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the only written communication?
Yes, it is on this item.
Okay. Perhaps Mr. Stornetta could respond with how people can get the type of information that is being requested by our citizens.
If they have any type of health concerns, I would encourage them to reach out to the county public health department. And if need be, I can post that number on our city's website when the council meeting concludes.
I think that would be a good idea. If there's no further public comment, I'll bring it back to the council. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
File or?
This is a receive and file, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Hammond, second by Councilman Gregory. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Abstain as I didn't hear the item.
Was a motion to receive and file the report that was presented?
Correct.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention by Councilman Strong. Thank you very much. Moving on, item agenda number 3. And I will remind the public, please, if you wish to comment on this at this time, you call 888-867-1694. Item number 3, fiscal impact of the COVID-19 pandemic adjusted budget process, and exacerbated undermining of the city's long-term fiscal sustainability. Mr. Frucci and Mr. Cornell.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Ryan Cornell, Director of Administrative Services. As you are aware, our nation's been through many economic declines, from the Great Depression in the late 1920s to the dot-com bubble to the Great Recession of 2008. Needless to say, our nation is going through one of those declines due to this COVID-19 pandemic. The graph here shows or compares the COVID-19 market decline at similar starting points with other market declines. As you can see from here, what makes the COVID-19 so unique is how rapid and immediate this decline has occurred. Time will only tell, but I'm hopeful that we will follow more along the lines of the 1987 Black Monday crash and bounce back quicker than the 1929 Great Depression. However, because this is such a unique event, I do want to put a couple of disclaimers out there. The analysis that we compiled are our best guesses today. Really, the purpose of this presentation is to provide context of what these percent declines really mean. There are too many unknowns at this time for me to fully report the extent of this pandemic, what this pandemic will have on city operations. We don't know how long this will last. We don't know how long it will take for tourism to bounce back to historical trends. We don't know what the immediate or the long-term impacts are for our residences. We don't know how many have already lost their jobs, what our local unemployment rate will be, and really how deep this recession will be. One of the main reasons why we don't know is because taxes are paid after the fact. For example, Transient Occupancy Tax, TOT, returns are submitted 30 days after the last day of the previous month. So the money we're anticipating to receive next week are for February stays, which had very minimal COVID-19 impacts. Even when I get March's stay information that we'll receive towards the end of April, COVID-19 will only be impacted about half that month. Again, by the time we get April data, shelter and home mandates may or may not have been lifted by the time April ends. So to compound this delay of information, state sales tax system is set up quarterly. So middle to late February, received sales tax information from just Q4 of 19. Typically, we've seen sales tax data from the first quarter to the next 6 weeks, but the state has also approved a 60-day extension for filing. This puts me 14 weeks out from seeing the first quarter data, which again had very minimal impact from COVID-19. So with that all being said, a lot of the data that I am providing in this presentation is from outside sources, more national and state averages rather than our actual city trends. Oxford Economics provided some information on the impact of COVID-19. They anticipate not only are tourism revenues going to decline from March and April, but it'll take the whole rest of the calendar year to rebound. The chart on the right is the city's, the chart on the left is the anticipated reduction in tourism revenue over the next 9 months or so. So as you can see from the chart, at 80% decline for March, 70% decline in April, and you'll see declines all the way through December. The chart on the right is the city's projected revenues based on these estimates on the left. The yellow, you could see from March, April, and May pretty much stay flat, so there's not a whole lot of revenues being received as far as TOT goes. And then a little bit of a spike in June, hopefully, if the stay-at-home mandates are lifted. So this alone for just the rest of the fiscal year, which is about 3 months, has a $1.6 million revenue loss in just TOT revenues. It's anticipated that overall for the whole calendar year of 2020 compared to 2019, we'll have a tourism decline of 31%. Sales tax is the city's largest funding source of the general fund. It comprises about 40% of the total revenues. It's anticipated that 3 business industries will be hit the hardest: the auto and transportation industry, fuel service stations, restaurants, and hotels. The information I have readily available to me came from HDL, the city's sales tax consultants, and their full report can be found under the city's website if you were to keyword search the sales tax. Specifically for the auto and transportation industries, sales had already started to flatten out, and really the only reason why we haven't had a decline in auto sales or sales tax revenues is because the prices of vehicles were keeping pace with the lack of sales. We are now anticipating declines similar to the Great Recession, as well as dealerships' incentives and really low interest rates that kind of help stabilize this market. Q1 to 2020 anticipated decline is 6%, 32% decline for second quarter of 2020, and an overall decline of 7.2% in fiscal year 2021. Fuel and service industry had a unique situation that not only did demand decline dramatically, but the supply soared because of the conflict between the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and Russia. We're anticipating oil prices to drop to pre-2002 lows and really anticipating fuel prices to remain low for some time. Q1 2020 decline of 3%, 20% decline for second quarter 2020, and overall next year of just under 5%. Hotels and restaurants are anticipated to get the biggest hit since tourism came to a grinding halt. Restaurants can only provide takeout and delivery options. More people are simply cooking at and eating from home. It's very possible that this could have a long-term behavioral change as well. The restaurant industry already has challenges staying open to meet its margins, and any decline is likely to cause many restaurants to close, only further lowering the revenue stream. It's anticipated that the Q1 decline for 2020 is 9.5%, 20% in Q2, and overall no growth anticipated next year. Fortunately, the property taxes won't be impacted this current fiscal year. However, if this pandemic is prolonged and foreclosures do begin to occur, we could see COVID-19 impacts beginning as early as 2021 and likely in 21-22. I haven't had an opportunity to examine the remaining major revenue sources such as community developments, charges for services, or recreation charges for services, permits or licenses. However, if we don't collect any more money for the remaining of the year, which won't necessarily be the case because we are doing some inspections and we are still charging for some services, our revenues would be short another $1 million. Okay, so with this all being said, based on the information I have thus far, the city is looking at about a $4 to $6 million hit to the fiscal year 2019-20 budget. That's close to a 10 to 15% hit in just 3 months of the year. The city's general fund budgeted revenues is right around 46% or 46 million. So this is a significant impact to the revenue stream for the city. If all goes well, meaning if we start seeing some normalcy in July with school planning to reopen in the fall and sporting events starting to happen again, if the Mid-State Fair happens in July, I think our revenue loss in 2021 will be in the neighborhood of $2.5 to $4 million. Again, just remember the disclaimers from before. I'm basing these numbers on state and national averages rather than city specific. As time goes on, I will continue to update City Council and the community on what our projected losses are. Real quick discussion on general fund reserves. The city is in better position than most with a 40% reserve balance, right around $18.6 million. So if we don't change any of our spending habits, the revenue decline will cut our reserve balances significantly. We also have an additional $6.6 million in our Section 115 trust, which can help supplement our pension expense. I'll touch on that here in a little bit too. Our minimum general fund reserve policy is 20%. And had we only maintained the minimum reserve policy, this one event would have depleted our reserves almost completely. Regardless, we still need to protect our reserves as much as possible. Again, we don't know how long or how deep this pandemic will be. It could end up being up to $10 million, and I could be way off the mark. So we need to look at all of our current expenses and really focus on not spending. I know we do a great job on purchasing and only purchasing what was needed, but again, we really need to start questioning and scrutinizing each and every purchase and just make sure that there's not a cheaper way to do things, and really to start pinching every dollar possible. This includes both the general fund and the enterprise funds, because the city as a whole is in this together, and so we're going to cut together across all funds. But additionally, for the enterprise funds, I'm anticipating that customer delinquencies will increase dramatically, especially for those who have lost their jobs. Senate Bill 998 was just recently passed, and it goes into effect on April 1st, which also limits the city's ability to shut off water to our customers due to non-payment. So that's only going to compound the bad debt accounts even further. As far as personnel goes, we've already pushed pause on all recruitments except for 2 that were already budgeted and currently vacant. Those are 2 police officer positions and 1 dispatch position. These positions do need to be filled as soon as possible because we do need as many first responders as possible. The dispatch center has already changed coverage so that there's 2 on a shift for 24 hours a day. Other ways of reducing expenditures is we have budgeted but yet not allocated close to $1 million towards our 115 trust. We will probably push pause on making that discretionary payment. And then lastly, we'll be looking at all of our capital improvement projects anticipated now and into the next year. We've already made a decision to push pause on the City Hall space planning project, but we may be looking at delaying some street projects, some infrastructure projects at Centennial Park or Mini Pool, maybe possibly the wayfinding signage. We are all going to look at all of our capital projects and make sure they're not immediately needed. So these are discussions we'll be having in the near future as the pandemic dust settles. So this is what I've gathered from CalPERS as of now. According to CaliforniaCityNews.org, CalPERS investments have declined 69 billion with a B from this pandemic. That's about a 17% decline, which actually could be worse since the S&P declined about 30%. According to the CalPERS CEO, the system was better prepared now than it was in 2008 by lowering the discount rates, balancing its portfolio, shortening the amortization periods, and having a better liquidity position. So what that actually means for the city, though, is that our unfunded liability has grown from approximately $37.9 million to $54.6 million, which is about a $16.7 million increase. That also means that our funding status has decreased from 73% down to 62%. Again, I just want to put a disclaimer out there that this is based on that assumption that our assets with the pension system has declined by 17%. CalPERS reports won't be received to the city for another 4 or 5 months. And even those reports should only show the 18-19 activity and not necessarily the impact from COVID-19. So because of all the uncertainty, we are recommending changes to the current budget process that we've been in the middle of for fiscal year 21-20 and 21 and 21-22. The one thing that's nice about doing a 2-year budget cycle is that we don't have to spend the time that it takes to develop a budget. However, in order to develop a 2-year budget cycle, we really need to have a long-term focus, and this pandemic has made things very unclear and unknown. We are recommending developing a very modified 1-year budget for council approval in June. It is anticipated that this budget will only include baseline needs. In other words, it's only essential non-discretionary budgets only. Hopefully by June, I'll have more insight on our revenues loss and really start coming up the game plan on how to minimize the impacts to our community, to our reserves. Again, this all can change by June, or it could change in September if the pandemic goes on, and we could do kind of mid-year adjustments from there. But this is the plan for now. And then this time next year, we'll pick up a 2-year budget process and start having our 2-year cycles beginning on fiscal year 21, 22, and 22, 23. That's the end of my presentation. I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Tom Frucci for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the key is to take all this information that Ryan's developed, and he's done an amazing job in just a very short period of time. What does that mean, as he said, not only for the rest of this year and for next year, but what does that mean for the bigger picture of our long-term fiscal sustainability? And this city in its 125 plus years has been through a series of these kinds of crises, nothing just like this, but clearly a number of crises. And we are a corporation, we are a municipal corporation, but if an investor were looking at a business to invest in over the long term, I don't think any savvy investor would invest in a municipal corporation because the long-term trends for cities are not good. Over time, our revenues continue to decrease in constant dollar terms, while the costs increase and the demands for services continue to increase. So, for example, over the last 5 years, the requests for police services have increased 40% with no increase in population. So our members of our public, both residents and businesses, need services the city can provide and are needing more of those, and yet the revenues aren't increasing to match. As a result of the various fiscal crises we've gone through in the past and the kinds of quality management we've had in each of the departments, and especially with Ryan and his predecessors, including Mike Compton, our city treasurer, the city has done just about everything a city can do to make sure that we are spending every dollar absolutely as cost effectively as possible. I can tell you and assure you our staff act as though the money that they're spending is their personal money, in the sense that they don't waste any of it. Everybody looks very carefully at the kinds of constraints we have and make sure that every dollar spent is a dollar spent appropriately. So there's not a lot of arrows left in our quiver to reduce costs. The city's done very well over time. We have a very high bond rating. We have, as Ryan said, fortunately, almost 40% of our general fund revenues in reserve right now to endure crises like these. But the council has limited options. You do adopt the budget each year, but you really don't have any say on the revenue side of it. Only the voters can uncross the crossing lines we've got, with revenues continuing to decrease in real dollar terms and costs increasing. So this really is a chance and an opportunity for the council and the community to continue to monitor this, see what the impacts are for us over the long term, and then decide how we want to proceed in the future to ensure the city continues to provide the services our public needs within the resources that the public gives us to do that. That is the end of our presentation, Mr. Mayor. Council questions at this point, if you would, please, sir.
Very good. I want to remind people out there listening in, if they wish to call and comment on this, the number to call is 888-867-1694. Council comments and, well, let's just go with questions right now, because we're not going to have comments until after the public has a chance. So council questions, Councilman Hammond.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ryan, on the hoteliers and their report of occupancy, is there any help if they give you more quick reports on their occupancy level? In other words, so you can better judge the TOT that would be coming in instead of waiting, a month and a half, 2 months down the road?
Yes, Mr. Councilmember Hammond. I've been in contact with Dana Stroud all of last week, and she's kind of keeping me up to speed on information that she's hearing on her end. So the information actually I got from Oxford Economics came from her, and it's kind of our starting point. But yes, I continue the plan on having communications with her as the weeks and months go along.
Okay, second question. With the situation for small business, and I've already lost actually one tenant of my own, but the SBA loan that is being processed through the federal government right now and stimulus package, is there any way we can get that information up to these folks somewhere so they can readily know where to go to make application toward that?
So, Councilmember Hammond, the package, as you know, that the federal government is looking at today, the Senate passed it unanimously on Wednesday. The House is due to address it and hopefully come to resolution today. We have already shared with our local stakeholders a detailed analysis of that bill. And when the mayor and several of us have a call later this afternoon with our local stakeholders to ensure that information and similar information gets out to the Chamber, Wine Country Alliance, Travel Paso, Main Street, the Hispanic Business Alliance, and so that they, in helping us out, can get it to their membership and their stakeholders. We want to make sure, just as you're suggesting, that everybody in our community knows the full package of assistance that's available to them from both the federal government and the state government as early as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I would even suggest if there's a way we can put those links on our website as well. I mean, the more we can get it online, the better, I think, for people to access. And
to that point, the SBA link is on our website, so I would encourage people to go to our website in addition to contacting those agencies.
Excellent. You're way ahead of me. And I'll reserve my last one, Mr. Mayor, for council comment.
Thank you. Councilman Strong, questions?
Yes, I'm wondering when we can get a more detailed budget proposal so that we know exactly what things are going to be continued, what things are going to be cut, and we establish some priorities on some things that may be necessary to continue functioning in a proper manner.
Yes, Councilmember Strong, we do plan on keeping City Council apprised all along the way between now and June, and then even beyond. So any decision, what points, we will be definitely bringing back to City Council for consideration.
Thank you.
Councilman Garcia?
No, sir, that was my same question. I just want to know what we're going to have to cut. Thank you.
Sure, you bet. Councilman Gregory?
Yes, I have a question of Ryan. Ryan, could you bring up the tourism graph you had showing the decrease in business over several months? Okay, that one right there, that's perfect. So the report that I received from, just for edification, the report I received from the tourist industry locally is that we actually had about a 40% decrease of business in March. So I think March and April are actually reversed on your graph, just for your information. That's what I've read, and that's what I've heard. So I don't know where this came from. My other commentary, that's a question. Is this a national survey?
So the information, the information came from Oxford Economics, and what they did is they looked at similar trends that happened in China and some of the other Asian countries when the pandemic first started spreading there.
Okay. Then my next question is on the CalPERS. Could you show us that graph for CalPERS on the loss? Okay, so I want to clarify one question. It says total pension, $69 billion loss. That's if they sold all the assets they have. That loss is a paper loss unless they sell the documents or the assets. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So that's the total value of the assets the entire pension system had, and then had lost.
Or has decreased in value.
Correct.
So my second question to that is, so if the stock market comes back, we could very well get back to where we were before with the unfunded liability around $37.9 million.
Absolutely. The assumption is, though, with CalPERS, though, is that the average rate of return or average growth of investments is right at 7%.
Right. But I'm more concerned about the calculation of the unfunded liabilities being able to come back to what it was by the valuation of the stock market.
Yeah, and it's true. We really need to, when it comes to the PERS pension system, we need to take a bigger long-term approach to how the funding status is. And you're right, we are just taking this very small myopic snippet of what happened in this last month with the pension expenses or pension investments.
Okay. And Councilman Gregory, it's also true that if you think about a curve, maybe sloping up at 10, 15%, if you assume that's the value of CalPERS investments over time, when they take a hit, like that first chart of Ryan showed, the stock market takes a hit in these recessions, even as the stock market and real estate values and other elements of the CalPERS portfolio starts to recover, you're still below the prior line, even if you're increasing at that same slope. So the problem with an investment portfolio like CalPERS is, since we're living off the earnings of that investment portfolio, is every time it takes a hit, even if the economy recovers, we've lost something in the interim. We've lost the dividend payments. We lost other things that would have otherwise taken place. And so it is going to have a long-term impact.
Got it. So, but it may not be as dramatic as displayed.
Exactly.
Okay. And then I think I did have one budget question. So I think, Ryan, what you said is our budget process is just going to get more simplified because of the loss of revenues, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The budget document that I'm envisioning for fiscal year 2020, 2021 will be very modified, very baseline information on it. And it is very possible that come December or January time, we do a kind of more larger mid-year budget revamp to once we know more about the pandemic and where it's led us or leading us.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Any other council questions before we go to the public? Okay. We're going to open public comment. I do not believe we have any callers on the line for this. Do we have any written communications?
No, Mr. Mayor, we do not on this item.
Very good. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for any further discussion and or a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hammond.
John, I kind of want to make some comments again that, with what we have going on here, and I think, we need to essentially change and modify our budget to become basically essential services. Kind of like what we did back in 2008 with the other recession. I hope this is not going to be a depression, but if so, again, to stop the leaking, I guess is what I'm thinking here, is to kind of focus back on cutting essential other things other than police, fire, sewer, and water. Those are the essentials that we want to definitely keep our public, connected with. But cuts to spending immediately, in my opinion, to protect reserves is going to be huge. Essential expenditures only. I mean, I think we need to get back into that mode, and I'm hoping we can actually maybe get some 2-2-1s with all of us regarding information that Ryan might want to propose on how to conserve the best we can. Not that we have to do it, but at least we have a plan at this point. Even maybe dusting off the layoff prevention plan, to cut our costs as far as staff. Shutting down possibly programs that we're programmed for right now that we may not want to offer, and maybe lay off those people or anybody associated with that kind of a system. I mean, we need to kind of get ready, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm assuming Ryan probably has a good handle on it already, but I think it might be good, Tom, that we get face-to-face, 2-2-1s with some in-the-weed kind of data and information that we might want to be all up to speed on how we can proceed if we have to.
Councilman Hammond, you make very good points, and I agree with you totally. In fact, these are some of the points that I made to the city manager almost a week ago. So I'm assuming that process is underway, and I'd be very surprised if we aren't all of one mind about what you're talking about right now. Tom, do you have any input on that?
So I agree with Mr. Hammond and you, Mr. Mayor, and that process is underway. In fact, it was several months ago that we all discussed making sure we not only dusted off, but updated the layoff prevention plan to make sure we had a current handle on the kinds of opportunities we have to reduce costs and ensure that we continue to provide services. What I was trying to say earlier is that every time we go through one of these situations, the tools we have decrease because most of the steps that could be taken were taken in 2008. And so they just become more difficult and more painful each time. But it's something we absolutely have to do. And we've been preparing for this. And we will make sure as quickly as we have some numbers together and some proposals together, we will meet with the council both in 221s and in full session to review those with the council.
I think understandably, Tom, you realize the council is all pretty much concerned about the things that Councilman Hammond has brought up, and we're ready to get to work on it. So, other council comments before we move to a motion?
Yes. Yeah, Fred Strong.
Mr. Strong.
Yes. As we do this, it is very important, I think, that when we think of essential services, we think of our ability to perform them as well. And the layoff prevention plan is an excellent one. But using the people who are still on staff in perhaps a broader way, especially I think we may have a complete change in our entire society as a result of this. And our communication systems may change. We may be utilizing people in other ways. I've been to some conferences nationally that are looking into a variety of ways to serve the public better and keep the costs even lower, or at least no increase in costs, and still do a better job of communicating and of serving. So I think we have to be a little bit flexible in some of this area and think of our own family as well, our own city family, so that we don't exacerbate the total situation by having more people in trouble within our city. So let's be careful just how quickly and how we move forward.
Well, I also understand, through this stimulus package that we're going to be able to have some relief from the federal government as well. So obviously staff are going to be engaged in how we can sustain our folks as well. I don't want to lay anybody off at all. But
no, yes, Mr. Hammond, it's also very important that we maintain the best communications we can with the federal and state government and what's going on so that we know what is available to us through every resource we have available to us.
Agreed.
Very good. Any further council comments? Councilmember Gregory or Garcia?
So I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
So I'd like to make a motion that we receive and file a report, and that in that motion that the staff will be getting back to us on meeting 221s on the budget.
Strong seconds.
I have a motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Agenda item number 4, and a reminder again to the public, if you'd like to call in and comment, the number is 888-867-1694. Agenda item number 4 is the affirmation of San Luis Obispo County Emergency Services Director and Public Health Officer orders related to the COVID-19 emergency.
Good morning, Your Honor, and members of the council. So the item on your agenda this morning is an urgency ordinance to affirm the emergency orders that the county has issued, specifically related to a temporary moratorium on evictions and the shelter and assistance with enforcement of the shelter-in-place orders, some of which you've heard touched on already this morning. So the foundation, of course, for this item is the emergency declarations that we've seen. You can have the next slide. That were first issued by the governor on March 4th with a statewide declaration of an emergency, and then we had the followed by the county issuing a statewide an emergency declaration on March 13th, and then eventually you had the emergency declaration by the city on March 17th, as you all recall. And so following on those issues, following on those declarations, we had the March 16th order by the governor. There's been a flurry of executive orders, but specific to the evictions, the governor issued Executive Order N-28-20, which suspended any state law that would preempt or otherwise restrict a local government's exercise of its police powers to impose substantive restrictions on residential or commercial evictions based on non-payment of rent, arising out of a substantial decrease in household or business income or substantial out-of-pocket medical expenses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic or any local, state, or federal government response to that pandemic. And then following that, on March 18th, the San Luis Obispo County Emergency Services Director issued a local emergency order and regulation providing for the suspension of commencement of the foreclosures as well. So the county emergency order, which has been identified as emergency order number 3, imposes a temporary moratorium on residential and commercial evictions through May 31st of this year for failure to pay rent during the emergency period if the tenant demonstrates that the tenant is unable to pay rent due to financial impacts related to COVID-19. So what is the financial impact related to COVID-19? Next slide. So an impact under COVID-19, the financial impacts are being sick with COVID-19 or caring for a household or family member who is sick, layoff, loss of hours, or other income reduction resulting from a business closure, compliance with the recommendation from a government health authority to stay home, self-quarantine, or avoid congregating with others during the state of emergency, extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expenses, or child care needs arising from school closures related to the COVID-19. Next slide. So to qualify for this, the tenant must notify the landlord of the inability to pay rent due to COVID-19 related financial impacts within 30 days of the date the rent is due and provide supporting documentation that it is a COVID-19 related financial impact. The order does not relieve the tenant from eventually paying the rent. They have to do so within 6 months after the expiration of the local emergency. Next slide. So that summarizes the eviction item and the temporary eviction piece of it that we are asking the council to basically affirm or ratify in the urgency order. Councilmember Garcia had asked about this earlier, and because it was a county order and there wasn't clear authority that actually applied within the city, we are following the lead that the city of San Luis Obispo has also done to basically ratify those orders and allow for some enforcement should the city choose to do so. The second piece of this is the shelter at home orders, which I think everybody's familiar with. On March 18th, the San Luis Obispo County Emergency Services Director issued the countywide shelter at home order, which is Order 4, that took effect on March 19th at the end of the day, and that was further amended and ratified by the county health officer on March 21st. That order currently expires at noon, 12:01 p.m. on April 17th, 2020. From what we're hearing, that may well be extended, but at the moment it is still expires as of April 17th. Shortly thereafter, March 19th, the governor issued Executive Order N-33-20, which included an order of the state public health officer mandating that all individuals living in the state of California stay at home or at their place of residence, except as needed to maintain continuity of operations for for critical infrastructure sectors. Next slide. So For that, the essential businesses are allowed to continue to operate. These are in your critical infrastructure areas. Examples are healthcare operations, grocery stores, certified farmers markets, auto repair shops, hardware stores, certain media services, your newspapers, banks, laundromats, plumbers and electricians, and ongoing construction, including housing construction. Non-essential examples would include entertainment venues, nail, hair salons, gyms, dine-in restaurants. Of course, the delivery and carry-out meals are okay. Next slide. Excuse me. So the county health officer will be enforcing that order by inspecting businesses they typically regulate throughout the county, but they are also asking for assistance from the cities in enforcing those regulations throughout the city. Their visitreadyslo.org, of course, has a lot of information on this that you heard, I think, Jonathan allude to earlier. There will be administrative and licensing sanctions. The county health orders also carry with them the weight of criminal violations that can lead to a misdemeanor or a fine. Under the county health law, it's up to a $500 fine or both. So misdemeanor is imprisonment up to 6 months in jail. So the county is seeking the enforcement assistance of the city. There are already some state law provisions, unlike with the eviction item, that would authorize the city to enforce those county health orders within the city. Those are on the slide in front of you, such as the Health and Safety Code sections 101.029, 120.155, and Government Code section 41601. In addition, note that we did affirm that the city appointed the county health officer as a city health officer in 1947. So that provided some basis. However, there was a concern in working with the county that the city didn't, obviously enforcement via a misdemeanor or criminal sanction would be an absolute last resort and not one that any of the agencies in SLO County are wanting to pursue or anticipating having to pursue. So the urgency ordinance would allow the city to have some additional enforcement options beyond criminal enforcement, such as code enforcement or issuance of an administrative citation, which we have by saying that those orders are also being issued under the city's declaration of emergency. So then we have some additional flexibility. Next slide. So the recommendation before you this morning is an urgency ordinance affirming the orders of the Emergency Services Director and the Public Health Officer of the county related to COVID-19 state and local emergency, including a temporary moratorium on certain residential and commercial evictions and shelter-in-place orders, and expressly affirming that such actions and orders as applicable are applicable and enforceable within the city jurisdiction. Because it's an urgency ordinance, it would take effect immediately and requires a 4/5 vote. So with that, I will hand it back to the mayor and see if there are any questions or comments.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate the report. We'll start off with council questions with Councilman Strong.
Yes, I think this is all very good. One of the things that's being said even nationally is do not use language that involves making people even more afraid. And shelter in place is one of the things that they're hoping to replace with something along the lines of stay home and work safe. I realize, right now that's what the order is, so we should do that. But in future, let's see if we can find a softer language so that we don't scare people, but we realize that this is for their own good.
Thank you. Time for council questions. Councilwoman Garcia.
No, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Gregory.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
Yes, maybe Ty would be able to answer this. Are we going to be handling this on a complaint basis? In other words, do we really have the staffing to be able to go around and enforcing this kind of a thing? Are we looking for work, Ty, for our officers? Bottom line.
No, we're not looking for work for our officers, Councilman Hammond. Currently, the county, the sheriff's department, as well as on the county's website, they set up hotlines I know the city of San Luis Obispo has done the same thing. They've received an influx of community members that are calling in to report businesses and even neighbors in some cases for violating the orders. With that, the establishment of those lines, a number of those are expected to be forwarded to various jurisdictions, including ours. Currently, our dispatchers are recording the amount of complaints that we get. We do have our code enforcement staff and some of our community service officers that have identified approximately 20 businesses locally that seem to be violating the order. Of course, as was indicated by our city attorney, we're looking for willful compliance with these orders, and we have a plan in place to address these kind of in a progressive manner, which starts off with a phone call or a quick visit to the business to make sure that they're aware of the order and where they fall in those categories of essential businesses. And then, of course, if we need to, we can progressively deal with the situation if they don't want to be good neighbors.
There you go. That's what I'm hoping, exactly how you'd handle it anyway. Just trying to get them to comply nicely first anyway and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Ty.
Thank you. Any further council questions before we open to the public? Hearing none, we'll open public comment, and I'm notified by staff that we have no one waiting on the phone and we have no written comments on this item, so I will close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion and motion.
Go ahead and make a motion if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Please, Mr. Hammond.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and adopt the urgency ordinance affirming orders from the Emergency Services Director and Public Health Officer of the County of San Luis Obispo related to the COVID-19 state and local emergency, including a temporary moratorium on certain residential and commercial evictions and shelter-in-place orders, and expressly affirming such actions and orders as applicable and enforceable with the city's jurisdiction.
Second by Gregory.
I have a motion by Councilman Hammond, second by Councilman Gregory. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia,
Aye.
Councilmember Strong,
Aye.
and Mayor Martin.
Aye. Measure passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on. I want to let people know that we are going to have general public comment, as I promised at the very beginning of the meeting. We're going to have that at the end of the meeting. So if you have a general comment that you're going to want to make, you're going to want to give us a call at that phone number at the end of the meeting. And the phone number again is 888-867-1694.
Mr. Mayor, real quick question.
Yes.
I did have a question here on the Grandview. Do we have anybody still in Grandview Apartments?
Mr. Mayor, this is Tom. No, sir, we do not. Other than the on-site manager.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5 on the agenda is Transient Occupancy Tax Collections, Waiver of Penalties and Interest. Mr. Fucci, Mr. Cornell.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Ryan Cornell, Administrative Services Director. Transient occupancy taxes, also known as TOT, are collected by hotel, motels, short-term rentals on behalf of the city. The taxes are collected by the transient and then forwarded onto the city 30 days after the last day of the month. So the taxes that are due on March 31st were for the TOT collections between February 1st and February 28th. Staff is estimating that income would be approximately $400,000. Taxes that are due on April 30th would be for the periods of March 1st through March 31st. With the impact to COVID-19, those rents are estimated to be about $250,000. Under normal protocol, if they don't make the payments on time on the due dates of the last day of the month, they would incur charges, penalties, and interest. The urgency order before you today would allow us to waive those penalties and interest that we would have otherwise charged. Also want to put out there that the tax forms would still be due on the due dates. However, the payments would be submitted no later than August 31st. Should also note that the slow TMD and travel Paso assessments would still need to be paid on time as usual, as the city cannot waive or doesn't have the authority to waive those assessments, penalties, or interests. With that being said, I would turn it over to City Council for questions and comments.
Thank you very much for that. Council questions. Councilwoman Garcia.
No, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
No questions. Comment at the end, though.
Very good. Councilman Gregory.
Yeah, Ryan, I have just one quick question for you. So those additional taxes or assessments are still paid to the city, is that correct?
That is correct, and we have a couple weeks to gather all of those and send them to Travel Paso and Slow TMD, the business loan.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Thank you.
And Councilman Strong?
Yes, a similar question to Councilman Gregory's. Are we in touch with these other organizations, and are any of them considering waiving theirs or deferring them?
We've reached out to both entities, and they, similar to the hotels and short-term rentals, are seeing the influx of cash flow issues as well. And so they would prefer not to have those assessments delayed at this time.
So, Councilmember Strong, we believe it's important that both Travel Paso and the locale continue to receive the revenues that they depend upon in order to market our area and ensure we are one of the earliest people to plan for recovery and initiate recovery. Neither Travel Paso nor Business Locale, being the single-purpose organizations they are, have reserves that can help them weather a situation like this. So I would also ask the council to know that the city of Pismo Beach has recently taken a similar action, and the other cities in the county that have significant tourism and hotels are considering a similar action.
Mayor, John Hammond.
Yes.
I do have a final, a quick question here. Tom, who brought this item up for action? I'm just curious where it came from.
This was a request from Travel Paso, and they have been in constant contact with their members. And we've seen, as Ryan indicated earlier on his budget presentation, that a few of our hotels have already closed for the interim, and we hope not permanently because of the dramatic and rapid loss in occupancy. Others have had to lay off significant staff and are entering into significant cash flow challenges over the next few months. And what we're trying to do for hotels, which is one of the few, if not only, industry that makes a regular payment to the city based on TOT, and we should all recognize this is the city's money. It is not the hotel's money, because the hotels are just, and other lodging establishments, this includes short-term rentals, RV parks, bed and breakfast, and the like. They are the collecting agent for TOT, but we believe this is an opportunity to ensure that the cities eventually paid all the TOT that we are owed, but gives a chance for the hotels to weather the cash flow crisis and come out of this still able to serve the public.
Thank you.
Are there any other council questions? Very good. We will open it to public comment. I understand we do have one caller on the line. Can we put that caller on, please?
Caller's on.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I think this is myself. This is John Arnold, GM of the Holiday Inn Express. I just would like to say just a couple quick comments. First, thank you very much for even having this on your agenda today. As noted by Tom Fuccier, City Manager, obviously this is unprecedented time for us all, and this particular measure would allow each hotelier the opportunity to hold on to substantial cash flow to at least try to get us through the next 30, 60, 90 days, or however long this is going to take. But it's obviously a substantial amount. allowing us to have the ability to retain a potential extra employee or two and keep our doors open is crucial throughout this time. So I absolutely appreciate the fact that you're even talking about this, and I really hope that you approve this.
Very good. Thank you, John. Appreciate your calling. That's the only caller we have online. We do have 2 written communications, so I'll ask staff to read those for us, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The first communication is from Matt Meja of the Adelaide Inn in the Best Western Plus, Black Oak. Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I am writing to ask for your support for item number 5 for the delay in payment for a few months of Transient Occupancy Tax. It would be huge help to our hotels viable. The winter and early spring months are the slowest months of the year for our business, and now with the COVID-19, our business has dropped to nearly zero. Last weekend was Zin weekend, a week before our 108 rooms were completely booked, and then the cancellations came, and we rented only 3 rooms for Saturday night. The delay in payment of the TOT would help very much to keep the doors open for the next couple of months. Right now, we are struggling to pay our staff and other operating expenses. Please consider approving the delay of the TOT for a few months. The city's support would be greatly appreciated. Kind regards, Matt Meja. The second public comment received via email was from Dana Stroud, the Executive Director of Travel Paso. Honorable Mayor Martin and Council Members Garcia, Gregory, Hammond, and Strong. On behalf of the Board of Directors for Travel Paso, Paso Robles Destination, we would like to express support for the action being proposed for item number 5 on the March 27th, 2020 special meeting agenda, and encourage you to authorize the Director of Administrative Services to waive the penalties and interest for late transient occupancy tax revenues received for February and March 2020 transient lodging services until August 31st, 2020. As we are quickly seeing the lodging businesses in Paso Robles, including hotels, motels, RV parks, bed and breakfasts, and short-term rentals are being significantly impacted by the rapid downturn in transient visitation to our community due to the shelter-at-home mandated by the Governor of California and other orders that restrict non-essential travel. This impact is leading to declining revenue streams for our lodging properties and is creating a financial burden and limited cash flow situation for them. Your proposed action provides much needed and appreciated relief by allowing for late payments to be submitted without incurring penalties and interest. Additionally, we support the exclusion of the Travel Paso and Visit SlowCal assessments from this action, as our respective tourism assessment districts are in place with our lodging industry to generate revenue streams to help market and promote the destination. These assessments will become even more vital as we pivot our marketing plans towards recovery from the coronavirus crisis. Our organization has stopped all paid advertising at this time and has reorganized our budget to accommodate anticipated revenue slowdowns due to lack of visitation at a minimum for the next 6 months. Thank you for being responsive to the requests from your lodging community. We appreciate the consideration and will continue to monitor the situation in partnership with the city's finance department as we move through these unprecedented times. Respectfully submitted, Dana Stroud.
Thank you. That will conclude public comment on this item. I'll bring it back to the council. Is there further discussion?
No, I'd like to make a motion when ready, Mayor Martin.
Councilman Gregory?
I would like to make a comment.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I don't particularly care for this item too well because, again, these monies are collected ahead of time. And it's not really, again, to be used in their benefit, more the city. We're going to be looking for every penny we can get right now because of our situation as well. And it is money that has been brought into their account. To me, it's not a whole lot of money either. The 12% that we have on a room, equates to a few dollars. But even still, I just don't quite follow the benefit that they would gain from keeping this money. And I personally don't support it at this point.
Very good. Any other comments?
Yes, Councilman Strong.
Mr. Strong.
Yes, and I respectfully disagree a bit with Councilman Hammond. I think Dana Stroud's letter was very well put. And this money comes into us because people are renting those things. And I think that their consideration of not doing advertising right now when people aren't allowed to travel, unnecessary travel, is very wise on their part. I would hope they might defer some of their payments as well. Not eliminate them, but defer them, because they should not be doing much advertising during this particular time. But once we see the end of this coming or this being lifted, that's when that money should go to them so that they can then advertise significantly in order to boost those revenues back up. In the meantime, we don't have the impacts from tourism that we normally have. So the money that we get isn't needed to prepare for and pay for those impacts, since there are none. So it seems logical to me that ours are deferred also to the time when we do have another influx of tourism, and we again resume those particular liabilities and the effect that they have upon our streets, our roads, our services, etc. So I think this is a good ordinance, and I will support it. And I hope those other organizations will strongly consider either a slight deferral and or not doing unwise expenditures.
Thank you. Councilwoman Garcia, do you have a comment?
No, sir, I don't.
Very good. I just want to say that I would also respectfully disagree with Mr. Hammond. I understand his point, but I think we've long acknowledged the fact that our economic engine locally here depends heavily on tourism, and TOT that we collect through the hoteliers is a big part of that. I think that the more we can share the pain of this crisis among all the partners, the better chance we have of not killing our golden goose and making sure that we have revenue streams in the future. With that, I'm back to Mr. Gregory for a motion.
All right. Before I make my motion, I'd just like to make a comment that the travel industry is our partner, a big partner, and there are several small businesses involved in the hotel industry that are supported by this, especially the hotel owners themselves in small business situations. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve this. I move that we adopt an urgency ordinance at number XXX, authorizing the Director of Administrative Services to waive penalties and interest for late transient occupancy tax, TOT revenues received for February and March 2020 transient lodging services until August 31st, 2020 at the latest.
Strong seconds.
A motion by Councilman Gregory, second by Councilman Strong. For the city attorney, am I correct in understanding we need a 4/5 vote on an urgency ordinance like this?
That's correct.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Strong?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
No.
Mayor Martin?
Aye. The issue passes 4-1. Thank you very much. We are going to go on to our next agenda item, which is something that's been added to the agenda. We have some explaining to do about that. But before I do that, I want to remind people we will have a short general public comment section right after this item for the usual general questions, not having to do with any specific item on the agenda. So if you're considering making a comment or asking a question of a general nature, you're going to want to get in line after this item to make that comment. And once again, the number to call in is 888-867-1694. Now we have the agenda item number 6, and I will turn it over to the city manager to explain why this has been added to the agenda and what we're doing.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this item really has 2 phases to it. The first phase, I just want to give you a brief introduction of the issue, and then you can determine...
Tom, just a moment. I have a note here that we have to actually have a motion to add this to the agenda.
That's what I was just getting to is the first phase. I just wanted to introduce the name of the item. No problem. Thank you, sir. So an issue came up yesterday morning in terms of a proposal to us, and it relates to the manufacturer locally of the gowns and other items that are called the personal protective equipment, PPEs, that our firefighters, nurses, hospital workers wear to protect themselves from catching the COVID virus or any other highly contagious disease. And I'm not asking for a decision from the council this morning, but I am asking for a discussion by the council of whether the city should become involved in assisting with the local production of those PPEs, and that's why I'm asking this item to be placed on the agenda. And as the city attorney can advise you, this came up after the publication of the agenda, number one, and number two, it is a health and safety item that has urgent implications if the city chooses to become involved. And those are the two tests of whether an item can be added on an urgent basis to a special meeting agenda such as this. So the first action, Mr. Mayor, as you rightly pointed out, is does the council wish to even discuss this item today?
Very good. So can I ask the council if we can have a motion to add that to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Was that Councilman Strong?
Hammond.
Yes,
Thank
second
you.
by Strong.
Motion by
And just
Councilman
to
Hammond. Second.
clarify,
Yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
just to clarify this, because we're to add this to the agenda, this does require a 2/3 vote.
Thank you. Motion by Strong, seconded by Hammond. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Strong,
Yes.
Councilmember Hammond,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia,
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory,
Aye.
and Mayor Martin.
Aye. Measure passes. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, members of the council. So just to give a little bit of a background, when our firefighters acting in their role as emergency medical responders receive a call from a resident or business that someone inside the occupancy is potentially suffering from COVID-19 or some other kind of highly contagious disease, the fire chief has adopted very stringent procedures they are to take in responding to that call, because we cannot afford to lose our first responders or our health care providers, because those are the ones that are the only ones available to keep the rest of us healthy and recovering. So those procedures require first that someone from the residence come outside and meet with our engine company, let's say, that's responding, and deal with one person who at that point is probably in the PPEs, and those are gowns, gloves, face shield, and mask to protect them. And then if in fact there is the need for the full engine company to go inside to start rendering assistance, then the other two members of the engine company and potentially the squad and potentially the ambulance and even a police officer would also don full PPEs and go into the residence. So as you can see, in any given call, we may utilize a fair number of these PPEs. And one of the high priorities through our logistics work in the EOC has been to ensure that we have an adequate supply of these PPEs to last us through the emergency. And that's where the problem comes in. As you may have seen by a post of one of our supervisors earlier this week, the county is looking to source PPEs from a local vendor who manufactures these in China or somewhere else in East Asia. That's all well and good, but fortunately we have a local company, Daniels Woodland, who has stepped up and agreed to convert some of its manufacturing capabilities to producing these PPEs right now. So it's a local company that can make them to our needed specifications, and that we have some assurance that we will get these. Part of the problem of ordering them from China or some other country other than the United States is we've already seen that orders placed by our county or our state have been diverted by the federal government to areas that are harder hit. And I appreciate that. I understand the need for that. But that doesn't also ensure that we have protection that we need in this county. And since we have a company that's willing to step up and start manufacturing these, that was never before anticipated to be a supplier of these. It's over and above the kinds of supply lines that are already being established by others. So as I mentioned, Daniels Woodland submitted a request to us yesterday for us to establish a line of credit for them to last 6 to 8 weeks, and the line of credit would be a total of $300,000, a revolving line of credit, to enable them to purchase the materials necessary to build the PPEs. And so they are trying to take orders, and these orders can be from all over, including from our county. And they're saying, as is true of any business that's rapidly expanding, cash flow becomes the primary constraint, because they have to pay for the supplies potentially before they get receipt of payment for the goods that are produced. So we have been analyzing this request, and thanks to Ryan Cornell, our finance director, as well as Mike Compton, our city treasurer, they reviewed the financials of Daniels Woodland. They've talked to the principals, and Mike Compton also reached out to Community West Bank and Julie Richardson in particular. And the council remembers we have an ongoing pilot program with Community West Bank where we invest a certain amount of city funds based on their commitment to use those funds to make loans to businesses and residents in our area. That was an ongoing program, but it's certainly one that is primed to be taken advantage of in this situation. So as this council meeting is going on, Community West Bank and Daniels Woodland are trying to address the request and see if that can be met. The city attorney, as kind of a contingency plan, has already prepared a series of documents, a loan agreement, and other documents that would be necessary if the city were to step in and help out in case we become the lender of last resort. That's not without some risks. It's not something that cities normally do, but we're also trying to look for ways to ensure our first responders are safe. So at this point, we're not asking for any action of the council. We're very hopeful that Community West Bank and Daniels Woodland can come to agreement, but there's no guarantee that's going to take place. And so I just wanted to present this item to the council, get your feedback and direction. And if you are not interested in any way in having the city involved in this, that's fine. If you want us to offer our good offices to assist Community West Bank and Daniels Woodland, that's fine. If you feel that if we need to be the lender of last resort, we should be willing to consider that, that's fine as well. But it's really a situation that's evolving very rapidly that I wanted to get your direction and feedback on. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councilman Hammond.
Yes, Tom, this would definitely be under the same provisions as we would normally have made a loan, through U.S. Bank. In other words, U.S. Bank is the one that's doing this. We're just giving them the okay to proceed directly with U.S. Or with Daniels Woodland, or how would it be handled? Are we involved in any way in the actual loan?
At the moment, we are not involved in any way. We are facilitating the discussion. However, if those discussions aren't successful, then what level of involvement, if any, would the council want the city to have in their review of the financial situation of Daniels Woodland? Both our finance director and our city treasurer have some significant concerns. I appreciate those. I also I want to keep our firefighters safe. So there's really one of trying to balance off various needs.
Would the city have any discount, I guess you might say, with, in other words, we benefit directly because we're basically funding the project, that we might be able to get a better rate on PPEs? In other words, we're definitely going to need them, no question, if we can get them at a discount. And locally, that's definitely a win-win for the whole situation. But has any discussion happened on that?
We have not had any detailed discussions with Daniels Woodland. I would be very careful going that route. We are part of an overall system that it's actually the county that places orders, and we need to hang tough with the county and make sure we're a part of the county. But I can also see that Daniels Woodland, recognizing that we are their local city, may be able to give us some special consideration, but that's certainly not something that I would recommend we ask for immediately.
No, but I mean, as far as being locally and we can come down and pick them up at the place, I mean, it makes it very, very convenient as well. So
exactly.
I have nothing further at this point.
Thank you. Councilman Strong?
Fred Strong, yes. My question is there a provision in here or any papers being provided that might have us backing up that loan by the bank and guaranteeing it behind their loan rather than us doing it ourselves?
That is certainly an option we consider. And in some sense, the program we already have with Community West Bank does exactly that. We invest, for example, $1 million in Community West, and they commit to us based on that investment. And that investment, is between us and them, but they commit to us based on that investment that they will increase their loans to the local community. So one option might be, instead of just $1 million in Community West Bank, that we place additional funds in Community West Bank, and based on that, they commit to this loan. That's tricky legal grounds or financial grounds. I certainly don't claim to have all those issues worked out, but that's another option we could pursue.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Garcia.
No, sir. Just it sounds like a great deal. I'll weigh in on the comments later.
Very good. Thank you. Councilman Gregory? I'm going to take the silence as being no comment from Mr. Gregory. I will open it up now to public comment.
Sorry.
There he is. There he is. Go ahead.
My mute button was on. Sorry. So this is a question for a city attorney. So I'm supportive of local businesses and trying to help them out in a situation like this, but I'm very concerned about precedent setting for funding projects for local businesses and how that would be fair to other businesses. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So there obviously are limitations on loaning and grants of money to private businesses. It's permissible if the council finds that there's a public benefit to the community with respect to a loan. So the council could certainly support the loan, authorize the line of credit if it does come to that, based on the public benefit findings of the pandemic that's ongoing, and that the materials, the PPEs that would be produced would be used to help, all first responders and medical professionals, and including our own first responders. So I think you can make the public benefit findings, but you're correct to note that we would have to make those findings. So this doesn't open the door to just any loaning of funds to private entities. It would be based on the specific public benefit findings.
All right.
And we would have... I was just going to note that if the council were to actually do the loan, we would have a line of credit agreement, a security agreement, which would be based on a UCC filing. So there would be protections in place.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other council questions? Okay, we move now to public comment. I have a note from staff that we have no one online. Is that still accurate?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is no one on the line.
Thank you. And since this was added to the agenda, we have no written communication. So public comment on this item is closed. We'll bring it back to the City Council. And any further discussion
Mr.
by
Mayor.
council member?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman Strong? Yes?
Yes, Mr. Strong, go ahead.
Okay. This is part of the can-do attitude of Paso Robles. It's the very thing we encourage our citizens to be aware of and to take part in. And I think that this is a chance of outstanding citywide leadership on our part. I think that any resolutions that come to us that would enact this must have a finding of health and safety and urgency. I would assume that those would be forthcoming, and we would have an emergency meeting in short order once we know exactly where we stand on this. These are strange and unusual times, and as the President of the United States has said, we are at war. We are at war with a virus, but we are at war. And let's consider it in that light and proceed accordingly and approve this.
Thank you. I think I heard Mr. Mr. Hammond, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom, did Daniels Woodland indicate how fast they could get up and running on this project?
The question really is how quickly they can ramp up at high volume. I can tell you that Randy Harris, our fire marshal, happens to live next door to one of the principals of Daniels Woodland, and they were talking over the fence one night about the need for PPEs. And Ron Daniels said, well, why don't you give me a sample so I can look at it? And Battalion Chief Harris, Fire Marshal Harris said the very next day they delivered 10. So it's very clear this is can-do attitude, as Mr. Strong says. Mr. Daniels has indicated he's willing to convert over other manufacturing lines and go on to 24-hour multi-shift production. I can't speak for him in terms of how quickly he can fully ramp up and how many he can make, but it's clear that we have somebody locally who's seen an opportunity and wants to help us out as well.
Well, I would agree. I mean, they're a very good partner for Paso Robles. I think many of us know they just finished their manufacturing facility on Ardmore, and he actually did call me about the fact that they were not able to work because of the law that was in place. This would definitely get them able to put people back to work as well. Both he and his brother John are good partners, again, with the city. I would certainly support moving forward with this option. I don't have any language to make maybe you might want to read it off, Tom, as far as the ordinance, and then maybe we can all approve it.
So were there any
more comments?
Okay, well,
all right.
Yeah. Whoa. Let's not get all excited here. Mr. Gregory.
Mr. Gregory. Comment. Yes, sir.
Please.
So one of the things that I'd like to comment on is I don't think we can make a motion other than direct staff. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not asking for a motion to complete any kind of an agreement. I'm asking for your conceptual direction. Is this something you're interested in us pursuing, and what level of city involvement would you be willing to support? We are not ready at this point to bring any specific action or specific agreement to the council. That would, as Mr. Strong says, follow in the next few days at an emergency meeting or other special meeting.
So I just want to make sure that I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. And I'm sorry, Steve, I don't want to shut you out. I'll get you back in here in a second. The first thing we need to decide is, do we want the city involved in helping this company produce this PPE? Secondly, to what extent do we want the city involved? Do we want to do some sort of loan guarantee through our partnership with the local banks, or do you want to do a local revolving line of credit from the city itself? Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gregory?
So my commentary on this is that I would be interested in supporting this effort after we exhaust all possibilities with the bank first, so that we don't become a lending part of this. But if we have to, I think that I'd be okay considering it due to the circumstance of putting their people back to work and providing something that's needy for the entire county and our local area. But I think as our responsibility as council people, we also need to reflect the current state of financial affairs of our city. So.
Very good. Any other council comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Strong again.
Mr. Strong, yes.
Yes, I concur with Councilman Gregory in this, and I think it's a matter of priorities. So I think our instructions to staff should be to consider all options in an appropriate order, relying on the bank first, and then any backup that is needed in a escalating form. And with that instruction, I think they will bring us the appropriate thing at the appropriate time.
So if I'm hearing council conversation correctly, I would entertain a motion to first of all say, yes, we are interested in pursuing some form of involvement in this effort, that primarily we want to work through our relationship with the bank, and that we would want to instruct staff to bring back appropriate findings and reports of collateral before we move forward on this. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Well, excuse me. Excuse me. I have a motion. Who made the motion?
Strong.
I have a motion from Councilman Strong and a second from
Gregory.
Councilman Gregory. Okay. So do we have any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Strong.
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Mayor Martin.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Mr. Frucci, did you get what you needed out of that discussion and action?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay. Now we're going to go to, this is different than we usually handle things. We have general public comment now. This is a time when folks can make a comment or ask a question about an item that was not on today's agenda. Usually we have that at the beginning of a meeting. Now we have one at the end of the meeting. We announced that several minutes ago so people would have the opportunity to call in. I see from a note from staff that we have no one on the line right now. So we're going to close general public comment, bring that back to the council, and if I am not mistaken, that ends our business for today. Is that correct, Mr. Frucci?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to ask for general closing comments from the council, if there are any. Mr. Gregory?
Yes, I'd like to extend an appreciation and thank you to the entire community of Paso Robles. I've never seen our town quieter, but that's because of the respect of the things that we have to go through for this coronavirus. And I want to thank everybody for supporting all the businesses that are continuing, including the construction and all the other industries that are being able to make their way through this. This is a great community, and as far as I'm concerned, the community really is hunkering down and staying home. You could drive around town anytime. There's just nobody out there, and I just want to say thank you to the community. So.
Thank you. Councilman Hammond.
I've never been so lonesome. I mean, there's no meetings. I can't believe it in 13 years. I mean, it's like what happened. But no, we're moving along and make sure everybody's safe out there. We'll get through this.
Thank you. Councilman Strong. Is Councilman Strong online? If he's muted, he'll come back to us in a moment. Councilwoman Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you. With myself being on the front lines at the pharmacy, I've been working double shifts, and I just want to commend everybody for being patient out there. I know all the pharmacies that we call around are getting hit pretty strong with just regular coughs and regular illnesses. And I just want to say, hang in there, and we'll all get through this. We do live in a great community, and I appreciate everybody's patience. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to echo all the compliments given by the council to our community for really showing what we're made of here in Paso Robles, and I, too, am very proud of that. I'm also very happy to work with the council that has adapted so well to this telephonic conferencing. It's something brand new for us. It's even a brand new time of day for us. And although it gets awkward at points because we can't see each other, I think it's working very smoothly, and I appreciate all the flexibility that the council has shown in making this work. That being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Hammond, a second by Councilman Gregory. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Our next meeting, yes, thank, will be a next regular meeting, be Tuesday, April the 7th at 6:30 p.m. So you're going to want to tune in for that. And the deadline for submitting items for the next regular meeting is going to be, well, it's already passed. So what we have is what we have. So the next regular meeting is going to be April the 7th, 6:30 p.m. Thank you all.
See you guys.